This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The American army said that 3 of their soldiers were killed in armed conflicts in the province of Anbar in western Iraq.
With the killing of these soldiers, the bloodiest month came to an end with the death of 18 soldiers. Likewise, Iraqis have experienced a bloody month with the death count numbering 290 since the end of the month, according to official Iraqi surveys.
The past month was the bloodiest month for American soldiers since the beginning of the year. With the death of 3 American soldiers in Anbar, the death toll of American soldiers reached 18 on April 1st. These soldiers were killed in the midst of the escalation of violence in Iraqi cities in the past few days. This month, 290 Iraqis were killed after several attacks. In terms of Iraqi deaths, this month is considered to be among the bloodiest, according to an official Iraqi survey. The killing of the American troops in Anbar has new implications. Americans had breathed a sigh of relief, believing that the security situation improved after the local population turned against al-Qaeda. Under the leadership of Abed al-Sattar Abu Risha, tribal militias formed the first organization that confronted al-Qaeda, which was at the time called the Anbar Salvation Council. The council later spread from this province to other Iraqi cities. In appreciation of the council, the former American President George Bush paid a visit to the province in the year 2007, where he met the chairman of the council, who was killed shortly thereafter. Meanwhile, activities of the Al-Sahwa Council were accompanied with several military operations in which Iraqi troops fought Shiite militias in cities located in southern and central Iraq. As a result of this, security improved, but not for long, as exemplified by the most recent instances of violence. The American administration must evaluate the recent developments in Anbar when making future decisions pertaining to security agreements, especially now that the Americans have a bigger responsibility in Iraq following the withdrawal of British troops from the south of the country.
The vicious cycle of violence has not spared anyone in Iraq. The American army announced that 3 soldiers were killed from the infantry division and another from the Navy while they were conducting a military operation against armed fighters in Al-Anbar province in western Iraq. The British forces ended their fighting missions in Iraq 6 years after they participated in the invasion. These were the words of the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown after meeting with his Iraqi counterpart, Nouri al-Maliki. Brown said that Britain is proud of its legacy, which will stay in Iraq after its troops will leave. He said that his country has begun a new chapter in its relations with Baghdad that is based on a long-term partnership between the 2 countries. This partnership is based in the economy. The Iraqi and the British signed an economic memorandum of understanding. Iraqi markets, which are thirsty for Arab and foreign investments so that the infrastructure can be rebuilt, have its match in London. London found in Iraq an opportunity amidst the global financial crisis. Diyar Al-Omari reports from London.
Britain looks for an escape from its financial crisis in Iraqi markets, which have been searching for Arab and foreign investments in order to rebuild the infrastructure. This explains why the 2 sides signed an economic memorandum of understanding. Invest in Iraq. That was the title of the conference. It was a clear invitation to British investors and companies to try the Iraqi markets, although everybody knows that the security problems have not been resolved yet.
نحن مستعدون في وزارة الدفاع وزارة الداخلية الوزارات الأمنية الأجهزة الاستخبارية الأخرى.
The Interior Ministry, Defense Ministry, Security and Intelligence Ministries are all ready to provide any additional security for any company that wants to come to Iraq.
إلى أي شركة يمكن أن تأتي إلى العراق.
The question is, what kind of economic investments do the Iraqis favor?
هناك في قانون الاستثمار الذي تم تشريعه.
The investment law that was passed recently gives a great deal of investment opportunities for investors in Iraq, including tax incentives for limited periods of time. This only applies for projects that are licensed by the Investment Committee.
Britain calls for increasing transparency in economic transactions between the two countries, especially because the two sides would be embarrassed by corruption.
We know that there is progress in the discussion about corruption and ways to fight it.
The British Ministry for Development confirms that Britain wants to invest $10 billion in Iraq. Foreign investment in Iraq depends on improving the security situation and fighting financial and administrative corruption. This might be difficult to achieve, but not impossible. Diyar Al-Omari, Dubai Television, London.
We start the news broadcast with the incident in the city of Kut, which raised questions about the agreement entitled The Withdrawal of the American Forces from Iraq.
The Iraqi Prime Minister demanded handing over the American soldiers who were involved in killing and arresting a number of Iraqis in Kut in the province of Mosul on Sunday. A number of parliament members demanded that the government submit a complaint against the American soldiers, saying that the raid operation breached the security agreement. This compelled other parliament members to demand that some articles of the agreement be amended in a way that ensures that the law is not broken in similar cases.
We exerted pressure on the Prime Minister to submit a complaint to international organizations against the American forces.
المنظمات الدولية بعلاج هذا الشيء. هذه الاتفاقية تحتاج إلى إدخال الكثير من المواد والأقسام التي.
This agreement needs a great deal of amendments to protect the rights of the Iraqi people from the American forces.
أن يحدث من القوات الأمريكية وبالتالي ظهرت الحاجة جلية الآن إلى أن تعدل الاتفاقية الأمنية.
It is very clear that the agreement must be amended with clear texts that would enable the police to prosecute American forces if they commit crimes against the Iraqi people.
It seems that these violations have pushed some to reconsider their position towards the security agreement. The Iraqi Accordance Front reiterated its insistence on holding a public survey pertaining to the security agreement on the scheduled time by the end of July. The Iraqi Alliance Party supported this position, saying that holding a survey is a constitutional right.
We agreed on this security agreement on the condition that this agreement be followed by a referendum in July. The people will be asked about the subject matter on the 30th of July, 2009.
A public referendum must be held. We support this referendum because the American side has committed violations since the agreement took effect. According to security leaders and the government, the American forces committed 20 to 22 security violations in different Iraqi provinces.
On Sunday morning, the American forces raided the home of Internal Affairs Captain Muammar al-Budairi and arrested him along with 5 other people from his family. The captain's brother, who was a police officer, and his wife were killed. Meanwhile, the multinational forces announced that the detainees were released without disclosing the reasons. Idris Jawad, Alsumaria Television.
واليوم صدرت الرواية الأمريكية لحادثة مدينة الكوت فقد أصدر الجيش الأمريكي بيانا.
Today, the American side disclosed their narrative of what happened in the city of Kut. The Pentagon released a statement expressing its deep sadness for the killing of the two civilians who were members of the Iraqi captain's family in Kut yesterday morning. The Pentagon gave its condolences. A senior Iraqi official said that the American forces acknowledged committing a mistake with the killing of the two civilians.
التقرير الأمريكي أكد أن القوة الأمريكية استهدفت وفقا لمعلومات سرية شخصا يحمل الجنسية.
This Iraqi official said that according to secret information, the American statement confirmed that the American forces were after an Iranian national who finances militias. The Americans arrested 6 people, including 4 brothers, and immediately sent them via helicopter to Baghdad for investigation. However, they were returned on Sunday evening after they were told that they were no longer suspects.
A Palestinian man has been given a death sentence for selling land in the occupied West Bank to Israeli settlers. It's the first time the death sentence has been given for this crime. Some Palestinians say he deserves to die for collaborating with Israelis, but others worry that it will set a dangerous precedent. Zaina Awad is in the West Bank.
Execution through hanging. With these words, the death sentence handed to a West Bank Palestinian for faking the ownership of land and selling it off to Israelis. The Palestinian Authority went straight to the military tribunal, bypassing the civilian court, to convict the accused, Anwar al-Barghit, of high treason.
This is a state security matter. It is serious and a very sensitive national issue. To sell or pass land to Israelis is a crime, and military courts must apply.
The land in question is strategically placed on the footsteps of Gush Etzion, one of the largest illegal settlement blocks in the West Bank. Jewish Israeli organizations pay millions of dollars for plots like this. Dirty money, Ibrahim told us. He's one of the relatives who found themselves on the receiving end of the scam.
When this is show up in the community that this land is sold to the Israelis, it was like a hammer hit my head. This is impossible. I realized this is not my dad's signature, and I decided to fight for my right, for my property, first of all. Second, for our dignity.
In Hebron, the case is the talk of the town.
Every thief and every traitor will end up like this.
The sentence is not harsh at all for anyone who sells land to the Israelis, when thousands of our young are losing their lives to liberate our land.
But human rights advocates say that every citizen has civil rights, and no crime deserves death.
We fear that this case will become a precedent, and the military court will find a new justification to interfere in cases, and at the end we find ourselves facing a police state.
The case was discussed and decided upon in the building behind me. Now, for the death sentence to actually be carried out, it would require the personal approval of the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. And people are waiting to see what the president will decide. Zaina Awad, Al Jazeera, Hebron, occupied West Bank.
Prime Minister Netanyahu will visit Egypt this month for talks with President Hosni Mubarak. The meeting will take place ahead of Netanyahu's White House summit, slated for May 18th. Several of the Prime Minister's key aides will be in Washington in the next few days. National Security Advisor Uzi Arad and Head of the Planning and Information Ron Dermer will be dispatched to the U.S. Capitol to prepare the meeting with President Barack Obama. And already in Washington this week is the father of captured IDF soldier Gilad Shalit. Noam Shalit met overnight with senior U.S. officials, including Mideast envoy George Mitchell, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and John Kerry, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Shalit told reporters that the Obama administration has a different approach and is now formulating its Mideast policy. Shalit said this presents a window of opportunity. Gilad Shalit has been in Hamas captivity since June 25th, 2006. And in a related development, about 100 people gathered in front of Defense Minister Ehud Barak's home in Tel Aviv today, calling for the release of kidnapped soldier Gilad Shalit. In other news, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman was grilled by police for 8 hours yesterday. It was his 4th interrogation since taking office. Lieberman is suspected of fraud, money laundering, and receiving bribes through his daughter's consulting firm. Following yesterday's interrogation, police sources admitted that they would have to conduct additional investigations, which would take a considerable amount of time. Meanwhile, the foreign minister is set to begin his first official trip abroad this Sunday. He will travel to Italy, France, the Czech Republic, and Germany, and will hold talks with his European counterparts and other senior officials.
اتهم وزير الخارجية الإيراني من الشهر متكي واشنطن بالكيل بمكيالين.
The Iranian foreign minister, Monashir al-Muttaqi, accused the U.S. of carrying out a policy of double standards. He said that the Washington report on terrorism criticized Iran but offered nothing new.
Because it supports the Zionist regime, racism, and occupation, and with everything that happened at the Guantanamo prison, the U.S. has lost its credibility and therefore has no right to make accusations against other countries. The double standard of Washington is known to the world, and there is nothing new in this report.
وزارة الخارجية السنوي حول الإرهاب وصف إيران بالدولة الأكثر رعاية للإرهاب وللمنظمات الإرهابية في العالم.
The U.S. annual report about terrorism said that Iran is the country that is the leading sponsor of terrorism. The report warned that Al-Qaeda has regrouped itself in tribal areas, which poses a huge threat to the U.S.
Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. Al-Qaeda is the biggest threat. This was the conclusion of the U.S. State Department's annual report, which is generally an evaluation of the policies of countries and organizations around the world.
Al-Qaeda
and other affiliated organizations still pose the biggest threat to the U.S. Since September 11th, Al-Qaeda moved to the remote areas of Pakistan, using mountainous areas as a safe haven for fighters supporting the rebellion in Afghanistan.
الخارجية الأمريكية التي أعطت إيران حصة الأسد من دعم الإرهاب رأت في فيلق القدس.
The U.S. State Department accused Iran of being the leading country that supports terrorism. This is evidenced by the existence of the Al-Quds brigades of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, its support of Hamas, and what it calls extremists in Iraq and Afghanistan.
حصة الأسد في الاتهامات الأمريكية فإن لسوريا نصيبها أيضا.
Iran and Al-Qaeda received the lion's share of America's accusations, but Syria was not left out. The reports condemned what it called Syrian support for Hezbollah and radical Palestinian organizations, as well as its relationship with Iran, which tops the list of countries who support terrorism. Other countries include the U.S.'s next-door neighbor, Cuba, which Washington accuses of supporting terrorism and money laundering. The U.S. report also talked about Sudan, whose relationship with the U.S. is in crisis. Although the annual report said that some countries continue to support terrorism, it also notes that there has been a significant decrease in the activities of Al-Qaeda and that it is enjoying less support. Some political observers believe that the report did not offer anything new. It was only a repeat of established positions taken towards a number of countries whose policies differ from Washington's. Nabil Salem, Al Arabiya.
The leader of Lebanon's resistance movement, Hezbollah, says Egypt has launched a political war against Hezbollah. Sayed Hassan Nasrallah slammed Cairo for its claims that the group seeks to target Egypt's security and stability. The Egyptian police have arrested a member of Hezbollah and accused him of involvement in a plot to overthrow the country's regime. Nasrallah says such allegations and media hype will not be able to mar Hezbollah's reputation or affect the upcoming legislative elections in Lebanon. He says the anti-Hezbollah campaign is just because the group refuses to recognize Israel. He cited the resistant movement's support for Palestinians in Gaza as another reason behind the anti-Hezbollah moves. Nasrallah has reiterated that political mudslinging by political opponents cannot shake Hezbollah's determination.
Israeli warplanes have attacked Gaza's Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Local residents have confirmed the raid, but the number of casualties remains unclear. The Israeli military says it has launched strikes against 2 tunnels along the border. The tunnels are used to transport food and medical supplies to over 1 million Gaza residents who have been living under Israel's crippling siege for almost 2 years. On Thursday, the UN's special envoy to the Middle East described the situation in the impoverished coastal strip as alarming. The UN Relief and Works Agency has confirmed multiple deaths among patients. It has also reiterated that many others are in urgent need of medication.
Israeli troops have clashed with Palestinians protesting the construction of a separation wall in the West Bank. Israeli forces fired tear gas at hundreds of demonstrators in the village of Nelin near Ramallah. Israeli security forces also arrested a number of protesters. Palestinians and activists hold a protest rally every Friday calling on Israelis to leave the Palestinian lands. Over 8,000 hectares of the land have been seized by Israelis for the construction of the separation wall in the West Bank. Another 800 hectares were also swallowed up for expansion of 5 Israeli settlements in the area. A ruling by the International Court of Justice has called for the removal of the barrier.
Still in that region, the United Nations has demanded that Israel freeze all pending demolition orders against Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem, Al-Quds. And as we have been reporting, it has also expressed concern over the humanitarian situation in the impoverished Gaza Strip.
Despite international condemnation, Israel has increased its settlement activities in recent years. The number of settlement projects in the occupied West Bank has gone up by some 70%. Taking advantage of a global inaction, Israel demolishes Palestinian houses to build new settlements. According to a UN report, Israel demolished dozens of Palestinian buildings in the first quarter of 2009. The UN has demanded that Israel freeze all pending demolition orders in East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, calling the move a clear violation of international law. Israel claims its demolition plans only include Palestinian houses that lack permits, but the UN says Palestinians are mostly denied construction permits. The houses of some 60,000 Palestinians of East Jerusalem are at risk of being demolished. The number of Palestinian requests submitted has more than doubled from 2003 to 2007, but the number of permits granted has remained unchanged.
Swine flu hysteria has taken over the Middle East. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt calls the pandemic more serious than a hydrogen bomb. Why is Arab media obsessed with the swine flu? And will this crisis restart peace talks between the Palestinians and the Israelis? Answers to these questions and more on Link TV's Mosaic Intelligence Report.
A spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt called swine flu more serious than a hydrogen bomb during a symposium on the health scare. Egypt's parliament votes to cull pigs immediately, and one parliamentarian proposes criminalizing hog farming.
The Gulf receives its labor force from all over the world. Every day, 250 planes land in the region. The labor forces in the region came from different parts of the world. In Saudi Arabia, for example, people come from more than 140 countries to perform the Hajj and Umrah. Some Arab countries have tourist areas and religious festivals.
The United Arab Emirates bans the import of pork products as a precautionary measure, and several supermarkets in the Sheikhdom yank them off the shelves. Meanwhile, an Israeli health official calls for world health officials to change the name of the swine flu to Mexican flu, since Mexico is where the new flu allegedly originated, and pigs are offensive to both Jews and Muslims. That, however, did not sit well with Mexico's ambassador to Israel. There is hysteria about the swine flu in the Middle East, yet only 2 confirmed cases were found in the entire region in Israel. For the past 3 days, swine flu has become the lead story on many Arab and Israeli networks. Reports about attacks in Iraq and other hotspots seem to have all but vanished for the time being. The new terror in the Middle East is swine. In Lebanon and neighboring countries, Arabs are being told to dispense with their traditional peck-on-the-cheek greeting to avoid contracting swine flu. However, there are also rumors circulating in East Beirut that swine flu was invented by Muslims to reduce the global Christian population. In the Algerian newspaper Shuruq al-Yawm, an editorial appears accusing the United States of inventing swine flu and blaming Mexico for being the source. A quarter century after it terrorized and kept us busy with HIV, the United States now offers us swine flu, the writer says. But nowhere in the Middle East are swine more impacted than in Egypt. Although Egypt has no reported cases of swine flu, it has nevertheless ordered the slaughter of all pigs in the country. The decree affected as many as 400,000 heads. Because Muslims don't eat pork, most of the pigs are owned by Coptic Christians, and many Muslim clerics in the country have taken advantage of this opportunity to warn against them spreading the disease, raising tensions between Muslims and Egypt's minority Christians and reigniting racism. They, the Copts, live in the midst of garbage and amongst pigs, warned Sheikh Naguib Fahmy during a Friday sermon. Known as the Zabbalin, or garbage collectors, many poor Coptic Christians live off the recycling of 9,000 tons of garbage generated daily in Cairo. Garbage collectors could multiply the spread of the virus because they raise pigs and enter most Egyptian homes, warns Muhammad Saif, a professor at the University of Beni Suef. Here is a bit of good news. The stalled peace talks between Arabs and Israelis have now been replaced by swine flu talks. Yes, representatives of Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority will be meeting to discuss cooperation in dealing with swine flu. In my hometown, Jerusalem, I've now borne witness to 2 occasions when conservative Muslims and Orthodox Jews are in agreement: the annual Jerusalem Gay Pride Parade and their current feeling of vindication about not eating pork. I'm Jamal Dajani for the Mosaic Intelligence Report. To learn more about this program or to share your thoughts, visit us at linktv.org/mir. You can also read my blog on the Huffington Post.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.